What's up, guys? I could do 1940 here. We are back with another episode of our Let's Talk NHL series, and in this video, I want to talk about the news from today, or at least there was a bunch of news today. But one of the big headlines: Mike Babcock has left the Detroit Red Wings and he has joined the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's right, Mike Babcock, after 10 years as head coach of the Detroit Red Wings, won a Stanley Cup in 2008, lost in the Stanley Cup in 2009. He is now the head coach of the rebuilding Toronto Maple Leafs, and when I saw this, I was truly happy for the Toronto Maple Leafs. It was pretty sad to see Babcock leave Detroit, just because it's not like he's leaving them because of retirement or anything like that, or because Detroit's just not a good team or anything like that. He just left, and I'll get to Detroit more at the end of the video. But for Toronto, this is incredible news for them. If you're a Maple Leaf fan, you must be very excited to bring in a coach like Mike Babcock, a guy who is so experienced and well respected in the league and just has had so much success, at the international stage and in the NHL as well. This is great for the rebuild. I don't know if this changes things as far as who's in and who's out of Toronto. As far as players, does this change? The trade rumors around Phil Kessel or Nazem Kadri, does this change that in any way, or do they still continue with the rebuild? That's the question. And I was actually thinking that as well, because they bring in Mike Babcock. That's great, but Babcock, he's made the playoffs with the Red Wings for the last 10 years in a row. After being fired by the Anaheim Ducks. He's used to having teams that are able to make the playoffs and having great playoff teams that can contend for the Stanley Cup. But the Maple Leafs, they are not that at all. Wow, that was a very quick shootout. But they've been struggling a lot over the last few years to make the playoffs, and they made the playoffs once in like the last 10 or 11 years, maybe even 12 years, and that was the shortened season. So they're in desperately need of a playoff run, just a playoff appearance. And my question is, does Mike Babcock come in and use the players that he has, see if it'll work. If Mike Babcock can work with guys like Phil Kessel, Dion Phaneuf, Nazem Kadri, JVR, and make them a good team. Or do they still go with the rebuild, trade Phil Kessel, trade Phaneuf, trade Kadri, and have Mike Babcock be the coach throughout the rebuild? Build up through the system, draft picks and the young players that they get from the trades, and try to build that way, and have Mike Babcock, coach the younger guys, until they are a good team. That's interesting. I would like to know what their plans are. But this is just great for them, because it's, like I said before, it's such a well-respected and accomplished coach. There's some coaches, to me, there are three types of coaches. There are coaches where, they're not very experienced. They're just kind of like the Flyers. They just signed that coach, that college coach. He's had no NHL success at all. There's that kind of coach. Brent Johnston, the coach of the Penguins, coaches like that. Then there are guys like Dan Bilesma or John Tortorella or Randy Carlyle, who, they're good coaches. They've had success, but if the team, if it isn't going their way, it's the coach's fault. People blame the coaches. They're not, I wouldn't say they're not well respected. They're just not top of the, they're not untouchables of the team. They're not the highest ranked. They're not, Dan Bilesma wasn't higher up in the Pittsburgh ranking than Sidney Crosby, obviously. When it came down to it and the Penguins weren't winning games and weren't winning in the playoff, they decided to go with, guys like Malkin and Crosby over Dan Bilesma, which makes sense. But with the Maple Leafs now, with a guy like Mike Babcock, what he says goes. He's the leader now in Detroit, or not Detroit. I'm so used to saying, having Mike Babcock, be affiliated with Detroit. But now he's the number one. He makes the decisions. If a player isn't working for him, they're not gonna make it in Toronto. It's not like the Maple Leafs are gonna have a couple losing seasons and Mike Babcock can be fired. No, that's not gonna happen. It's not gonna be his fault. He's been to the Cup with two different teams. He's made the playoffs all these years. He knows what it takes to win, and if he has the right players to do it, it's gonna happen. So he now with Brendan Shanahan and everything, they know what it takes. They go above the players in this instance. If they keep Phil Kessel and he has a bad year next year and the Maple Leafs don't make the playoffs, it's not going to be Babcock that goes. It's going to be Phil Kessel. They're going to accommodate what Babcock needs for his team in order to win. If he says we need a gritty third liner instead of a guy like David Booth or something like that, then they're going to go out there and do that. I can just picture that how it's going to be, and that's just great news for Toronto. They're finally going to have the rebuild it's underway now. They haven't really started trading too many big guys. They made some small trades like Cody Franzen and David Clarkson, but once the big dominoes start to fall, like Dion Phaneuf and Phil Kessel and maybe Joffrey Lupul, that's when it really kicks into gear. And then the upcoming draft as well. I think they have like the 7th overall pick, or no, not the 7th. That's Philly. I think they have the 4th overall pick or the 5th. That's good for them if they can trade Kessel and guys like that to get younger prospects and guys like that. Have those guys grow in the system and then eventually play for Mike Babcock. Go and buy into his system, the system he had in Detroit, and maybe within the next few years the Maple Leafs could be a playoff team. Who knows? But and then the final question is Detroit's playoff streak over? I mean, they have a good enough team to make the playoffs next year. With guys like Datsuk, Zetterberg, Kronwall. It all depends on how well they play. I mean, it only takes 1 year for a guy like Datsuk to go from amazing to the end of the road, basically. Look at a guy like Marty St. Louis. The last 2 years, in 2013, he won the Art Ross Trophy. In 2014, he had like a 70-point year, and then in 2015, now this year, he's falling apart. He's missing so many passes. He just doesn't look confident. He's just not doing well at all in the playoffs and in the regular season. He's just not the Marty St. Louis, even from last year. So that's how quick a guy can go from a superstar to, to retirement, basically. So that's a big question in Detroit. Can they still make the playoffs? They have guys like Nyquist and Tatar, and good enough defense and goaltending, and Peter Mrazek and Jimmy Howard to make the playoffs. But without Mike Babcock, who do they bring in as their new head coach? And can their playoff streak continue without Mike Babcock, basically? So that's a big question. Really, the questions. What is the direction now of the Toronto Maple Leafs? Do they continue with the rebuild, like I think they should? Just because they bring in Mike Babcock, I don't think that means, okay, stick with what you have and go for another losing season. I don't think that's what you do. I still think they go through with the rebuild. But do they go through with the rebuild? And can the Red Wings continue their streak without Mike Babcock behind the bench? So let me know in the comments what you guys think. And if you enjoyed, please leave a like, and I'll see you in the next episode.